Katie Zimmerman and Charleston Moves are working hard every day to ensure safety for cyclists on the roads of Charleston. I sit down one-on-one with Katie for a special edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And be sure to download the free Quintin's Close-Ups app in your Apple or Google Play stores. And of course, subscribe to my YouTube channel. Katie Zimmerman, welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're welcome anytime. Obviously, you are the executive director of Charleston Moves, and I know you guys are working hard to ensure safety for a lot of cyclists here in Charleston. And I went on your Facebook page just recently, and I love it. It's very interesting, your bio. It reads like this: bites, animals, conservation, environmental justice, books, nonsense.
Yep.
When you are biking around Charleston, what's nonsensical in your mind?
Oh, the nonsense really relates more to, I really like watching comedians and things like that. Yeah, so that's really more the sort of side interest I have in the Saturday Night Live. But nonsense in the more just sort of when you're thinking about ridiculous decisions that are really nonsensical in our region. You see a lot of them when you're biking around or walking around or running or waiting for the bus, and it truly is nonsensical that we as a region still are not investing properly in safe and connected infrastructure for multiple modes of movement. And we see it playing out with people who are standing in the rain waiting for the bus rather than being in a nice shelter that provides a little more a safer space, more comfortable space for folks who are waiting for the bus. We see it when we're walking on a sidewalk and all of a sudden it ends and there's no way to get around. A prime example of that is down at the intersection of Meeting and Mount Pleasant, where we witnessed a woman who's in a wheelchair who was just trying to continue on her way on the sidewalk, and the sidewalk disappears and then there's no crosswalk for her. So these are really nonsensical decisions that are being made on the part of our region. We're not prioritizing things for safety like we should and for efficiency.
Where is this infrastructure?
Well, it's right now it's sitting in a bunch of plans. And I think you and I have talked about before how there's no shortage of plans out there. I mean, we've got name a street or a portion of Charleston County. There's a plan for it that exists either by the Council of Governments or the county or one of the municipalities. We've already worked through these, what are great designs that are just sitting waiting to be implemented by people who really need to prioritize spending and getting these things installed.
What are those designs that are planned right now?
There are so many. Just general plans alone, there's for the Tri-County area, there's Walk Bike BCD. You've got all of the area comprehensive plans that include transportation. You've got Rethink Folly Road. You've got the Coleman Boulevard revitalization. You have multiple Ashley River Bridge plans. You've got the newly completed master plan for the West Ashley Greenway and the Bikeway. You've got so many projects that are out there right now. There's the 7 and 171 intersection. There's the Main and 17 intersection. I could go on and on and on with the number of plans that are out there waiting to be implemented.
And you talk about one of those plans. Obviously, there's some developing news, really breaking news here. Obviously, Charleston County has released an update on the South Carolina 771 intersection up there in West Ashley. And it reads this: Charleston County Transportation Development staff will evaluate new options for SC7 and SC 171 improvements project after the latest round of public comment revealed no preferred alternative. Mm-hmm. When you hear no preferred alternative, where does your mind go to?
Well, I think I know our comments from Charleston Moves, we didn't have a preferred alternative. We were very clear in what we submitted, which was alternative 1 looks to be the best. Alternative 2 we can work with. It's fine. There were a few things that were maybe not as great as alternative 1. Really, the only one we didn't want to see was no build, because that intersection is so incredibly dangerous, and it's not built for, it's not successfully built currently for any mode of transportation. So you've got motorists who are in danger using it right now. And it's certainly not a safe area or a comfortable area for anybody to bike and walk. And it really should be, because you've got several bus shelters that exist there right now. So people are waiting for the bus. You've got a couple of routes going through there. But also, it's a prime location to become a more connected area of the community. So you have a shopping plaza with multiple types of shopping opportunities, including the grocery store, surrounded by neighborhoods. This would be the most prime location to be able to make an area walkable and bikeable, so people don't have to drive their cars to get around this area for every single trip. And then improving it as well to make it safe for commuters is so important. And then adding to that the fact that it ultimately connects to the North Bridge headed to Cosgrove,
Right.
which we know is a deadly bridge that has to be upgraded for all users. That's no question about it. I think all of us have said over the years how horrifying it is that there hasn't been anything done about that bridge. So the ability to start working on connecting this area and improving it for everybody to be able to travel the way they want to and can afford to, and reducing traffic congestion at the same time. I think the no-build alternative doesn't get us to a better quality of life in that area. So fortunately, on that the release that you were reading from, they do identify that they're going to be sort of taking a new tack and looking at, since the majority of the comments were requesting no build, that they're going to look at other ways to improve the area, because it can't continue to function the way it's currently functioning.
What are the other ways that could improve that area that the Charleston Moves would endorse?
Absolutely, taking a look at the multi-use paths that were included in the alternative designs that they put forward. There's also several better, more robust crossings that folks could use that were laid out in the plans as well. I think those two things would be wonderful. Getting us as close as we can to the North Bridge with a safe multi-use path for folks, getting basically to the existing park area. I think that would be a great start to improving the North Bridge as well. There's also some areas that weren't included in the alternative designs that were presented that could use some upgrades as well. One of those, there's a street nearby called Amberley,
Right.
and there was no safe pedestrian crossing included at that junction within the project alternatives that were presented. We asked that they look at that to get people across the street safely. There's a bus shelter right there. There's a great frontage road right there that people could bike very safely on if they could actually cross over to it. So there needs to be some better crossings over there as well.
Now, in your mind, how much would that cost?
I have no idea. I don't know what they've set aside for budgeting in the half cent or any other sources for this. So since they're still going through the planning, design phase, and public input phase, I think it'd really be a matter of doing what they're doing, which the county is looking at the input they got and sort of taking a step back and figuring out what changes they could make that the community members who did weigh in would feel comfortable with.
And let me go back there, because I know they had over 700 comments for the 171. Out of those comments, which comment sticks out in your mind right now?
Oh, well, I didn't have access to the full range of comments that they got. I do know that there was close to the deadline for the comment period ending. I was biking around over in the neighborhoods nearby, and there were huge signs that were up from somebody who was saying things like, getting rid of left turns reduces your property values and things like that. I don't know what the data is behind those opinions. I do know that one thing that absolutely affects property value is walkability. That's why there are realtors who do walkability scores when you're assessing places to buy. So if you want to improve your property values, you definitely want to be in a walkable neighborhood. And so I think that's something that I hope people are thinking about if they were very concerned about other things affecting property values, like reducing left-hand turns, which apparently was was an issue of concern for some people.
What other concerns do you have about this area?
I mean, it's deadly. I consider myself a pretty fearless cyclist. And there, when you look at the spectrum of cyclists, there are and potential cyclists. There's the small group that's sort of the fearless, and then there's part of that group is also the group that doesn't have another option necessarily. So they're biking because that's what they can afford to do. So they're having to bike in areas that are dangerous. On the other end of that spectrum, you've got the small group of people who claim they will never bike. It doesn't matter what you do with infrastructure, they're just never going to do it. It's not something they're interested in. And then you have this huge segment of the population who would choose to bike if they had a safe and connected route to take, and if they felt like they were comfortable doing a bike ride to run errands. So I'm usually, I consider myself in that small group of people who is just going to bike regardless.
Okay.
And I will tell you, one of the few places where I get really scared is biking that route on Old Town near Samret. It's really terrifying. What is set up right now is unacceptable. So you've got a shared use lane of traffic. So that's when you see those share the road signs.
Right.
But the speed limit is pretty high. And then, of course, motorists are speeding even higher because it's a straight shot. So they're encouraged to speed. So I'm in the lane of traffic with folks who are speeding. I'm getting my elbow clipped by cars that are passing by at a high rate of speed. And the few times I've gone on the sidewalk instead, there's chunks of sidewalk missing. You still have to cross over driveways and other things, so you always have to constantly stop and check. It's not a safe or efficient route. And there's a lot of stuff that happens over in that area of West Ashley. We have public meetings that occur over there. We have grocery stores. I've got friends who live over in those neighborhoods who I want to go and see.
Right.
So it's I could probably qualify for the Tour de France if you timed me when I'm biking on that route, because I'm going real fast to get away from this car.
I bet.
It's very dangerous, and we need to fix it. If we truly want to revitalize West Ashley, we want to make it a safe and good place for all types of people, and improving that area, especially near Charlestown Landing, for people to be able to walk and bike and wait for the bus safely. That's important.
And another thing that's important to you is the Ashley Blue Bridge.
Darn right.
You said this on your Charleston Moves page just recently. You said this, quote, "This was what a connected Charleston looks like with the installation of a safe, equitable path over the Ashley River for people on both bikes and foot." Pretty amazing, right? We're still collecting letters of support from local businesses, neighborhood associations, club, and nonprofit organizations to bolster the city of Charleston's application due next month. This is the city's third attempt for federal funds. The competition is steep, but community support will significantly help our application stand out.
For sure.
What is that application looking like right now?
The city is working really hard to get it all finalized. We actually just sent in earlier today all of the letters of support that we've received.
Okay.
We wanted to get them all organized so that we didn't drive the city's grant writer
Okay.
insane with that pile of letters. And shout out to Savannah Brennan, who is, that we're a staff of two at Charleston Moves, and she does the best social media posts. If you see a boring social media post from us, I probably wrote it. If you see a good one like that, Savannah wrote it. You can just tell the difference. And what's really great about this project and the process of going through this grant application again, the support letters keep coming in, and they're coming in from such a diverse and broad range of entities. It's really exciting because we keep getting that reinforcement of how many people want to see a bicycle and pedestrian bridge over the Ashley. They understand what a game changer it would be for not just our city, but for our region. I mean, we're talking about connecting the most populated area of Charleston as far as residences go, which is West Ashley,
Sure.
with the densest employment centers, which is downtown. Being able to have a space for people to cross over the river without putting their lives in danger and without having to drive a car and deal with parking and traffic congestion and the costs that come with that, that's a big deal, and people recognize that. I mean, we've got, Fortune 500 companies weighing in. We've got community groups weighing in, neighborhood associations, civic associations, synagogues. Every group you can think of has weighed in on hospitality association. It's a really, really important project. It's important to a lot of different types of people, and we're seeing that through these support letters. So I haven't seen the latest draft of what the application looks like right now. I know the city was compiling some maps to sort of show where investment has taken place from the county and the city and the state as far as getting all of the connections in place to and from the bridge. So really the bridge itself is the gap. And this particular application also is not just money for the bridge itself. It's to get those last few intersections linked up to the future bridge. So getting people on the West Ashley Greenway over Folly Road, where Folly Road interrupts the Greenway.
Right.
And it's really not only inconvenient but incredibly dangerous. The part of this grant would go to addressing that connection as well, so you can get people safely to the bridge. And then on the downtown side, what that downtown connection looks like once people are off the bridge, getting them to a safe space to then go where they need to go on the peninsula. So I'm kind of babbling, but all that's to say, this is a big deal. We ended up with way over our goal of 200 letters, and not from individuals. This was from specific entities that represent anywhere from, a few employees to thousands of employees or members. And all of that has been compiled, and I'm feeling very good about that support and taking that support to demonstrate to Senators Scott and Graham, and then Representative Cunningham and Representative Clyburn as well, how important this is to their constituents.
Now, they said the third attempt for federal funds. Mm-hmm. If you were to get this fund, how much would that be as far as money?
So the breakdown of the budget, the city has that, but when for this particular grant program, which is for infrastructure like this,
okay.
It's for transportation infrastructure. So like last year, the Ports Authority got it.
Right.
So it's an interesting mix. So we're competing with highway proposals from across the country. We're competing with rural, urban, all sorts of different projects, all around reinvesting in transportation in different areas. So you have to have a minimum of a 20% match when you put this up. Mm. So what I can tell you is, as far as what the total cost estimate ended up being, we've got the 20% local match, and that is a combination of funding from Charleston County, City of Charleston, and then a private donor filled in the deficit that we were missing for that local match.
What was that deficit?
It was $100K.
Okay.
Not much, yeah.
Now, you talked earlier about the loops that needed to be filled as far as trying to get on the bridge and off the bridge.
Yep.
Why wasn't that in the last attempt as far as getting this funding?
It was.
Okay.
It was in the second attempt. And I can't remember if it was in the first attempt or not. I don't quote me on this. Well, you're going to quote me.
It's Quintin's close-ups.
I should double check this. But the first time they went for it, I believe it was for the bridge itself, not the connecting intersections. But I'm kind of doubting myself on that. But last year's application included those connections as well.
Now, where is this on the federal's top priority list, I guess?
It's a really good question. So what the federal project review staff for this granting program, each time they get the project, they understand the importance of it, they've given really good feedback each time.
Okay.
It's also made it as far as it can go until it gets to sort of the political side of things. So the big win is actually getting the grant, getting it funded. Closest to that is the application, making it through the review process and ending up on Secretary Chow's desk.
Right.
And that's the Secretary of Transportation for USDOT.
Right.
So each time we have made it to her desk. So we've gone really, really far. And the federal review staff really encouraged the city to resubmit this time around. So the sort of looming question that I don't have an answer to right now is, what do our congressmen think of this project? I know that they have been supportive of it in the past, the past couple of attempts. And Representative Cunningham did send in a letter of support for this. So the question becomes, do they value this enough? Do they value their constituents' wishes enough to really fight for this? Are they willing to advocate for this project to the secretary? And that is something that we're going to need to work on. Everybody else involved in this project is going to really need to hammer home to our senators and representatives that this is important. We need your help in getting this grant.
You said everything's fine until you get to the political side.
Right.
My question is, why the politics?
That's a question I ask myself every day. It's, we have to deal with the politics for every single project we work on here. Everything's politics, and it is so obnoxious. That's always what it comes down to, is you can get the funding for something lined up, and if your elected officials maybe aren't on board with it, they can decide to shift funding to something else or not fund it.
Now, in this particular photo that I see, obviously the Ashley River with the James Island Connect in the background, you have the existing Ashley River bridges, and then you have a separate pedestrian bike lane.
Yep.
Okay, if you were to add on a pedestrian lane on the existing bridges, would it be better for you all to get it that way?
We can't.
Okay.
Yeah, so well, I shouldn't say we can't. Looking at the different engineers that have looked at this every which way, and I'm glad you're asking this because we constantly get these questions from people who start paying attention to this and then they're like, oh, why pay for an entirely new bridge when you could just do X? The things that have been looked at, as you remember from the well-publicized suggestion last time around, it was the lane conversion.
Right.
And that was not politically feasible. And ultimately, Charleston County and DOT, they had the final say on that project. And DOT said no, because it's their road. Right. So the other things that have been looked at are cantilevering along the Legree Bridge, and the Legree Bridge is the one that heads from West Ashley into downtown.
Right.
So that the existing bridge could not handle the weight of having that added to the drawbridge portion of the bridge. So the next thing that the engineers looked at was, well, what if we did a combination of cantilevering off the side of the Legree Bridge for the actual bridge structure itself, and then you have a standalone portion for the drawbridge portion that opens up. It's a feasible project. There's about a $2 million cost difference between the combo and then the entirely standalone.
Okay.
So when the city looked at it, they said, we want this to be a project that lasts a long time. We want it to be a legacy project. We don't want to have to go back in and replace it again later. So we might as well go for the standalone. Because at some point, the existing bridges are going to need to be replaced. So if we do a combo cantilever standalone, then we'll have to deal with the bike ped access again in the future when that happens.
Why doesn't the city just get a whole new bridge now and add these lanes that you were asking for?
It's a great question. What DOT has told us is they will not consider adding these bridges to the bridge replacement list until 2050. So we've got a ways before they'll even start to think about replacing these bridges.
And obviously you talk about connectivity. Let me take you to Johns Island.
Cool.
Obviously there's a big, this debate about the Johns Island overlay meeting, particularly about Main Bay and Main
Yep.
Main Bay Highway. And there's a lot of proposals here, a lot of them that are complicated to the average person. How do you articulate this to the average person now? It's
really, really hard. And I don't know that I won't speak for Savannah. Like I said, Savannah does a great job of articulating things. I struggle with it. And it's something that I think we try very hard to get this stuff out there to people who are following us and get our emails and everything.
Sure.
It's still, there's a lot. Like we talked about earlier, there are so many plans out there, and we cover the entire county.
Sure.
So every week it seems like there's something going on, and explaining the ins and outs of it to people. I don't know that we've gotten good at that yet. Something we're still trying to get good at. With Maine and Maybank, the overlays,
Right.
that's been particularly confusing because you've got these two different overlay projects. One is for Maine and Maybank on Johns Island, and the other one is for Maybank on James Island.
Right.
And the Maybank overlay on James Island was timed with the unfortunate death of David Massey in January, when we started trying to figure out how we fix Maybank Highway on James Island to be safer in the immediate term. And the overlay is more of a long-term examination of how to implement land use and transportation changes along these roadways as individual properties get redeveloped or have new development put on them. So it's a longer-term vision, and I think folks got a little bit frustrated in the process because they wanted the overlay to include immediate fixes for the immediate dangers that we saw play out earlier this year and have seen play out for years. So with the overlays, the biggest thing we try to do is get people to actually go to these public meetings so that they can ask the city and county staff members questions directly. And there were a lot of people that attended these meetings. And then since Charleston Moves, we're really focused on the mobility aspect. There's so many things in the overlay proposals. We've honed in on specifically what we see as the best ways and really most cost-effective ways to make these streets safer and more connected. So in the future, if we make sure the overlay has written into it things like when this particular parcel gets redeveloped, they have to have space along the frontage for a multi-use path. We want to make sure we're getting those things done.
Okay.
And that way the cost, it's sort of a cost share between the developers and the public, which is fair. You know, if you're developing, you're impacting the community around you for the good and maybe not for the good, it depends. So we want to make sure we're getting things in there that are beneficial in the future.
Well, what about now? What are those immediate fixes are you talking about?
The immediate fixes, and we've really been working on immediate fixes for Maybank Highway on James Island. Like I said, we lost David Massey in January of this year, and he was simply trying to cross Maybank to get from one business to the other, and he was hit by a car, and that, you know, Maybank is something that the community has been concerned about for a long time. In 2008, I think it was, Charleston Moves and the Coastal Conservation League tried to get bike lanes put on Maybank Highway when it was last resurfaced, and DOT said no. And instead, what they did was they did that shared use lane that I talked about with Old Town Road, where you're expecting people on bikes to be in a lane of traffic with people who are driving at 45 miles per hour plus. It's just not a great situation. One of the things that we have learned since then, we've had some really great discussions with the DOT staff members related to Maybank. Years ago, they thought those shared use lanes were a good compromise. They thought they were being helpful to people on bikes when they did that. So when we explained to them, no, it's actually really dangerous for us, the staff, to their credit, heard us and they get it. So what we've been working on since January is basically the city, the county, and that includes staff and elected officials. We've had some state level elected officials as well, and then DOT. They really, to their credit, they have jumped right in. So we did a couple of walks of the corridor to get a sense of exactly what's going on out there with all of those officials.
Right.
The DOT staff member compiled all of the different suggestions that we all had, and he laid them out as far as immediate fixes, like getting new light bulbs in some of the street lights,
Sure.
And then there are some longer term fixes that are going to be. We're going to have to get creative to figure out how to do it. So the bike access on Maybank, it's going to take some money because we either have to widen the road to fit bike lanes, or we have to utilize the right of way to create multi-use paths. And either of those options are going to be. It's going to cost some money. It's going to take some time. So the DOT laid out all of the recommendations in a very well organized report. While he was working on that, Charleston Moves we had our Savannah and I, and then volunteers went out on Maybank Highway for a couple of days and basically did a bicycle and pedestrian audit where we counted people to see where they were going, what they were doing, where they were riding their bikes or walking, where they were having trouble crossing, where they were trying to cross.
Sure.
And we got some really good data out of that. Well, I mean, hundreds of people over the course of an hour or two are crossing Maybank Highway on foot, and they're doing it at very clear points, which was great. We were able to, by collecting the data and being really nerdy about it, we were able to actually see trends. So most people are trying to cross between Maybank Public House and the poorhouse. Right. They're not going down to the light where the crosswalks are because the crosswalks aren't great. The pedestrian signals, they don't always come on when you hit them, so you're waiting for a very long time. Sure. Also, the way the road curves, drivers are really speeding through there. And we even had motorists pull over and talk to us about their concerns as well. They're seeing the problems in their cars, and they feel unsafe. So it was a really great experience, and we took that data and gave it to DOT for inclusion in their report, so it's in there. And one of the things that we're now waiting to see, DOT, amazingly, they drew up a basic design for a mid-block pedestrian crossing near where people are naturally crossing.
Sure.
And hopefully it would be signalized to some level, like flashing beacons or whatever we figure out is the safest option. So they've got that design laid out, just a basic one. And we really, in working with the city and the county and DOT, the city applied for funding for that part of the project to the county, and hopefully we'll hear if it got funded in August. If it got funded, then we get our pedestrian crossing, but also we can take that funding and leverage it into other funding sources to try to work on the rest of the corridor and really get at that safe biking piece as well, and then looking at also how people are going to be able to walk the rest of the corridor.
When was the last time that area was resurfaced?
So they just finished, and a great opportunity that was unexpected. The DOT staff member who we were working with also didn't. He figured it out a couple days in and was like, "Hey, we have this great opportunity." The road was up for a micro surfacing, so I believe they finally were able to do that. They got delayed by the PGA.
Sure, right.
I think that they finally did that last week or the week before. And what they should have done during that process was restriped Maybank Highway basically from Woodland Shores down to Wapoo Creek, to where they've narrowed the lanes of traffic so that people will naturally drive slower. But then they should have also widened the center turning lane to prepare it for that pedestrian crossing that we have worked on, and hopefully we'll have funded by August.
Now, in this whole discussion and planning for the extension of this particular project, have you been able to talk to any of the Charleston County Council members?
Yes. So Councilmember Honeycutt came to at least one, maybe two, both of the walking audits that we did. And she's been very active on this project, and it is her, on the county level, it's her district, so which is great. And we've had city council members, and then, like I said, state legislators have been weighing in on this as well, which is very helpful. And also super helpful is the fact that the community really rallied. I mean, they stepped up. They've been signing our petitions. They've been writing letters saying they want to see this made safely walkable, bikeable for business, for neighborhoods, for everybody to just have a better space. I mean, Maybank on James Island has really turned into a nice little village center. over the years. You know, you've got all these different shopping opportunities and entertainment and all sorts of things, and it should be a lovely, walkable community. And Maybank, the way it's built right now, is sort of a scar running through this, where we need to help it heal up a little bit and get people able to enjoy the space.
Does the county or the city or even the DOT have enough money for all of this?
Never. And again, it comes down to priorities. So, you know, we were reminding ourselves today, the DOT allocates 0.6% per person per year for bike ped projects in the state. So it's not a lot of money. We as a state don't seem to value most forms of transportation. We seem to just value the one. And that's got to change. And that's why it's wonderful that we have people like Representative Pendarvis, who filed the Complete Streets bill this year. And that got some traction, which was great. And, you know, looking at what groups like Palmetto Cycling Coalition are doing to try to get the DOT Commission to incorporate a robust Complete Streets policy into how they look at projects. The way to do this, the most efficient and sensible way to do this, is to be incorporating all modes of transit every time you are retrofitting or building a new road. And if we're not incorporating all of those modes, and it doesn't necessarily mean a sidewalk and a bike lane everywhere. It depends on context, what the right treatment is. But ensuring that all modes are being connected every time a project comes up, that's really how we're going to solve this problem. And you've got the DOT that finally just recently began allocating money on an annual basis to safety improvement projects. It's not a lot. It's a start. So they're going to be getting started doing some safety audits of certain corridors. And that's, you know, I think we all appreciate that. It's not enough. So again, politically, we need to value people's lives over fast-moving cars. And that's really just how South Carolina is going to be a wonderful place for everybody to live and work.
Katie Zimmerman, thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank
and again, thank you for coming back from Quintin School Service.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, anytime. Yeah.